Hello and welcome to Wingin It. So I'm back with another gameplay video here today. This is coming from the Caatinga Cacholote Carnage Cup, which is one of the recent tournaments we have ongoing on the Wingspan Tournaments Discord server. So this is in the knockout stages. We had a group stage which was played over the course of a week or so, and now finishing that group stage. We are now into the knockout. So, yeah, I streamed a few of my group stage games over on Twitch. So this is a good chance to plug my Twitch channel if you haven't already tuned into a few streams and you like this sort of content with Wingspan gameplay and commentary, then you should definitely go and check out my Twitch page. So usually try and stream once or twice a week. And yeah, basically it's just like your regular gameplay commentaries, except it's done live. So there's a lot of viewer interaction. I like to keep engaged with the chat. And yeah, just kind of discuss the game as it's going on and anything to do with Wingspan, the new birds in the new expansion, or any strategies. Always happy to have a discussion about that. So yeah, if you haven't already checked out my Twitch page, then please do head on over and feel free to drop a follow. With that absolutely shameless self-promotion out of the way, I'll talk a little bit more about this tournament. So like I said, we are in the knockout stage. So we had a group phase, which was purely for seeding purposes. So everyone was split into groups of 4. We played single round robin, so everyone got 3 games. And then based on those results, everyone got put into one long list, ranked 1 to 96, and then that determined the seeding for the knockout phase. So fortunately, my record was just about good enough, with 2 wins and 1 loss, to get me into the top 32 seeds. And as a result of that, I got a first round bye in the knockouts, which meant I could wait a little bit for my opponent to be determined. And yeah, like I said, getting the first round bye, this is technically into round 2. So my opponent here is Kip from the Wingspan Tournaments Discord server, and yeah, they won their first round match and ended up facing me here in this match today. So it's a best of 3 series. They'll gradually be coming one by one over the course of the next few days. But yeah, here we go. We'll get stuck into the starting end here for game 1. And all in all, I thought this was a pretty good start. Always very, very happy to see that Order Wins goal. This is one of my favourite birds, I think, from the European expansion. Just such a strong power, I think, particularly early in the game. I kind of look at it essentially as being like a ruddy duck or a yellow throat, that style of bird from the base game that we already know is so strong. But the difference being that you don't discard the extra card, you actually get to tuck it, so you get a point. So obviously 2 food for 1 point. It's quite a heavy investment up front, but you're just naturally seeing a lot more cards, and particularly with a bigger deck in the European expansion, lots more interesting birds that you kind of want to spend time digging through the deck to try and find. Being able to get that card access is so important, and yeah, just being able to get some points as well along the way. Obviously, the earlier you get this kind of bird down, the more you can benefit from that. So yeah, I felt pretty straightforward to keep that, and then the cowbird as well. Always a bit of a risk when you keep a cowbird when you don't have the right nest type for it, but it felt like a kind of safe gamble. You know, I'm looking at those birds in the trade, particularly I think the goshawk and the chickadee obviously both work pretty well with the forester bonus card that I did choose to keep, and I will need to get something up there in the forest at some point just to enable some kind of food generation. So yeah, you know, either I use the seed to play the chickadee, and then if I want to keep the cowbird, I can, or I can discard it for food. Doesn't make a difference. Equally, I might look to play that goshawk, and then suddenly it can become a tuck card and just help get that down a little bit quicker. But yeah, it was a pretty interesting set of end of round goals here as well. So as soon as I saw that, you kind of jumps out to you that they're all from the expansion, and obviously most of the end of round goals in the base game are very heavily focused on egg laying. So plenty of kind of incentives to go for that grasslands strategy, build up an engine, lay lots of eggs. But when you get these kind of end of round goals, it definitely makes you think a little bit more about that. Very much, I kind of looked at this and thought, this is much more catered towards a wood duck. And so when I see my opponent there grabbing a second seed to go with their cherry, I was starting to sweat a little bit because, all of these kind of end of round goals, you're getting lots of food, playing white and no power birds, which are normally the big point birds that need lots of food, filling up columns, and then lastly, food cost to play birds. These are all basically the kind of end of round goals that you look for, I think, when you're going for that kind of wood duck forest engine, and certainly not having any that are to do with egg laying or having certain nest types down. That is certainly useful for something like a wood duck. So like I said, I was kind of convinced myself that they had a wood duck, but then I was quite surprised my opponent chose to go for the goshawk and not the chickadee. So kind of traditionally, I think you would pretty uncontroversially say that chickadee and wood duck is a really good start in the forest. Obviously, the wood duck's power, you get cards. At the same time, you're gaining food, and particularly if you get that second forest bird down, you're getting 2 food a turn. And then that chickadee is being that sort of passive point generator, just picking up those cached food whenever you take that action. And when you've got a wood duck down, you're going to be taking that action plenty of time. So like I said, I kind of convinced myself they had it, and then convinced myself they didn't, and then they put me out of my misery and just went and played it down. So like I said, was definitely surprised that the chickadee didn't get grabbed, which is kind of why I rushed into taking it when I did. And to be honest, I probably could have taken it sooner, but certainly once I kind of had a feeling that wood duck was coming, you kind of rush into picking these things up. But also managed to get the ready duck as well there on that same turn through the Order in Skull power. So really kind of nice strong start to the wetlands here. You see I laid eggs with the gull, so I'm kind of already thinking a little bit, do I play the ruddy duck? Obviously only 1 seed here, so do I play the chickadee and then get food and then play the ruddy duck, or do I just play the ruddy duck and just start digging and start drawing cards? Obviously I'm going to be looking at basically 6 cards a turn, and then one of those is going to get tucked behind the gull and one of them gets discarded. So I'm going to be generating lots of cards, but really more importantly, like I said, it's just about the number of cards that you're going to be viewing. And the more cards you can look at, the more likely you are to find those big point birds you want to play, or other strong engine building birds. So something like a mute swan, or a chiff-chaff, or even a chaffinch to kind of go for a late grasslands or forest pivot away and sort of tuck loads of those cards. Plenty of good options there. So you see I go for the chickadee first. So with the worm in the feeder, I'm kind of gambling a little bit and kind of hoping it's still going to be there when I go for food. And then obviously I can use that to get the ruddy duck down. So I do have to kind of think a little bit about this cowbird as well. So, like I said, with the kind of wood duck engine, not going to be a huge amount of egg laying. So my opponent, obviously, they did have to lay eggs there. They will have to lay eggs from time to time if they are going to play birds, unless they can get something like a mourning dove or a pileated woodpecker, any kind of egg generator in the forest. That would set them up really nicely. But without that, they will have to spend some time in the grasslands. Even if it's not a full-scale grasslands pivot, they are going to need to spend some time there and get some eggs so they can play more birds. But they get the robin down as well. So that's a really nice combination with the wood duck here. Kind of similar to the chickadee in that it's that sort of point generation, but it gives you that extra card cycle, which can be really important, I think, with the wood duck. Obviously you're looking at 2 cards a turn, but sometimes 2 cards a turn isn't enough. Particularly, like I said before, with this increased deck with the European expansion, there's a lot more cards to look through. It's always important to be able to view more cards per turn. And if you can do that while scoring points through that tucking action, then that's even better position to be in. So definitely feeling nervous with such a strong setup from my opponent there. But my setup isn't bad either. I'm going to be looking at lots of cards. through this wetlands. And then it is just all going to be about what I can find, you know, looking for those big point birds, looking for something that can get me eggs. I think a bush tit or similar would be quite nice to add to this wetlands. But yeah, otherwise some kind of food generator or point generator for the forest to go alongside this chickadee would be very, very welcome. But yeah, this first set of round goal is always a bit of a tricky one. So you see food in personal supply, quite difficult to kind of prepare for that and really compete, particularly against a wood duck engine where they're kind of naturally you know, being able to generate lots of food anyway. That's kind of their default action. So yeah, I kind of will have to potentially look at taking food on this next turn. You see common nightingale there, the pickup, really, really good option to have there. I think particularly these kind of co-op food birds are very strong against a wood duck engine because, like I said, it's all about taking that game food action as many times as possible. So my opponent is certainly not going to be short of food. If I throw a little bit of food their way with a nightingale and can save turns myself from having to go to the forest, then that's, you know, going to be a really good position for me to be in. Yeah, the kind of tricky point here, obviously, if I do play the nightingale, which I can do because I've got the egg, then I'm going to miss the end of round goal. So I was kind of weighing up in my mind, is it worth it? Do I play the nightingale? Do I lose the point and get that little bit extra tempo by getting the bird down just that one turn sooner? Or is it worth you know, drawing cards or going for food again, making sure I keep that point, but maybe slowing down on getting things set up? So always a tricky decision, always one that can make or break your early game. I think these first 8 turns are so crucial in getting things set up the way you want that even just kind of 1 or 2 turns spent not doing the right thing, or turns done out of sequence so you don't, you know, get that full efficiency of maybe discarding a card for extra food, or maybe you gained food before you played a bird so you missed out on a cached food or an extra point somewhere. That can come back and bite you. There's so many times in round 2 onwards where you think, oh, I'm just 1 food short of being able to do this, or oh, if I just had that 1 egg laid on this bird, I could play this and then suddenly unlock loads of options. It's such a common problem to have. So yeah, this kind of first round, really, really important to get things set up the way you want. And yeah, for the most part, like I said, I think I'm kind of happy with how things are going here. A little bit low on the points, which is always a concern. You know, I've only actually got 3 bird points down from 3 birds, a couple of tucks, 1 cache food and 1 egg. So yeah, normally you'd hope for a few more points than that. Obviously, you generally prioritize getting the engine set up over the points. You know, points are only going to come into play at the end of the game. It doesn't matter if you play a huge point bomb early game, it's still going to be worth the same at the end of the game. Whereas if you can get your engine set up in this first round, that's going to help generate more resources or score more points throughout the rest of the game, that's normally the way to go. So yeah, just with this strong card generation, and yeah, once I can get this nightingale down as well, then I'll feel pretty good. So yeah, my opponent, they went food, so no chance of winning the end of round goal, but I still felt it was worth going for food here. I think I had that extra card that turn, which I was probably never going to play. And yeah, just being able to kind of go for food there and get myself set up as we go into round 2 is very nice. And look what we have in the tray. We have a Chihuahuan Raven. So I was kind of umming and ahhing, you might have seen on that last turn, what is the extra food to gain? And my rule of thumb in that position is whenever you're not sure, take a rodent, because you never know when the Raven might show up. And it's always such a pain trying to get that rodent when you don't have it. It's much easier to just kind of take it when it's there. So a little bit of good fortune, obviously, in kind of preparing for that. And then it playing out. But yeah, you know, you've got to be prepared in those situations. And alongside it, we get Mute Swan as well. So one of those birds I was talking about earlier. Going to get plenty of tuck cards in the wetlands. So yeah, kind of feels pretty straightforward here. You know, once I've got this Raven, it's just about getting it down and trying to sort of start to build this engine around it. Hopefully get some point generators down, and then look to get that Mute Swan down as well to just help with the card cycle a bit. So I've just skipped forward a few turns here. You see I've got the Raven down, I spent a turn laying eggs, and got the food for this Western Meadowlark. So Yeah, this is not normally a bird that I play. I think a lot of people quite like it. I'm not a huge fan of giving the eggs away to your opponent. Obviously, you get 2 eggs, which is quite nice. And I have got a decent number of ground nest spaces, obviously with the mutes one potentially going down pretty soon as well. I was just going to unlock even more spaces. But really, I kind of had to play it here just as the only option. In hindsight, I would maybe have gone for cards once more. Obviously, looking at 6 cards a turn, your chances of finding something good are pretty reasonable in that position. I do think this is a mistake I've kind of noticed myself making quite a lot recently, is kind of settling too much for the birds you've been dealt. That was kind of my approach in the base game. I think that served me pretty well for the most part. But it definitely feels like in the expansion you have to be more aggressive on the card draw. And you really have to, kind of dig and look to try and find what you want early in the game so that you can get it down. You'll see there, having just played the Meadowlark, I decided to skip it. So slightly odd position, really, to do that. But it's mainly due to my opponent obviously running this Wood Duck engine and not really having the egg generation. So you see in those few turns we skipped, they did manage to go Egret into Whooping Crane for a huge double play. Which is always slightly upsetting to see. And then they added Eastern Phoebe, which I found interesting. I kind of just saw that as maybe getting some extra egg space. If they think I'm going to be using this Meadowlark a lot, they want to be able to have somewhere to lay those eggs. So yeah, it's a reasonable bird in its own right, and obviously those nest spaces will help. But yeah, I mean, if I can force them to spend a turn laying eggs instead of giving them a free egg, which lets them get birds down or spend extra turns, playing birds or go for food, I think that's probably worthwhile. But as you'll see, kind of as this game develops, there will come a point where I just kind of have to throw caution to the wind, start using this Meadowlark, play a bit more aggressive and try and score points myself, because ultimately if I'm skipping that power, I'm only getting 2 eggs and then the 2 food on top of it, which is a bit slow. Not huge point scoring, so do have to bear that in mind. But yeah, you'll see this round, I did play the Woodpecker, so that was purely just for this end of round. Needed something down to qualify. And yeah, helps for the existing bonus cards, the forest that I've got. And gave me a pretty good bonus card in return as well, so I was quite happy with that. Now, I was feeling happy until that Dunnock appeared, so one of these European expansion birds, you get a free egg every time your opponent activated their grasslands, but obviously the eggs come at the end of the round. So yeah, pretty good defense here against my Raven and the grasslands. They're going to be getting lots of free eggs from that, so they get points, but ultimately those eggs are going to be really valuable for them. Even if I'm not giving free eggs with this Meadowlark, that's just going to help them get more birds down. So yeah, always frustrated when you see players kind of play that kind of defense against what your setup is. But yeah, for me, I think the priority really is this Mute Swan. So yeah, again, it's kind of been a bit frustrating this round. Taken kind of a little bit too long, I think, to get this Mute Swan down. I'd really like to have got it down sooner so that I could focus on drawing cards, getting plenty of tucks, so yeah, cycling through the deck, trying to find the birds that I want to play. But really I did have to get that Raven down and try and get a little bit of a grasslands built up around that. And yeah, hopefully I can build on that and use this Mute Swan to dig through the deck and get those additional grassland engine building birds that I want to find. Alright, so skip forward a few turns again, just to the point where we are finally going to get this Mute Swan down. So yeah, did unfortunately lose the previous end of round goal. Not a huge amount I could do about that. Obviously, again, maybe if I'd been a bit more aggressive on the card draw, I could have found that extra white power bird to get down. But yeah, I've made my bed now, so I'm gonna have to go lie in it and just work with what I've got. But yeah, I think now the Mute Swan is down, certainly I can afford to try and go for cards, maybe a little bit more, and feel safe in the knowledge that I am at least getting some points while I'm doing that. So here we go. First turn drawing cards. With the Mute Swan down, and yeah, some okay options, some workable options, which is kind of always what you look for when you go for for cards like this. So King Rail is quite nice. Savannah Sparrow might be a good option just as a way of filling up the grasslands a little bit more quickly. Obviously going to help with the end of rounds. And yeah, you know, the rest maybe I'm not so interested in, but something's going to have to get tucked, something's going to have to get discarded. You're not always going to draw completely amazing birds, so yeah, probably time for the Nightingale to go. And yeah, kind of I'm thinking here, you know, maybe I can go for eggs once, I can get a couple of worms, and then do this double play with the Sparrow and the Swift. It's a good way to kind of flesh out this grasslands a little bit more quickly. When I'm laying eggs, I'm getting that extra egg, but then equally, you know, I might have some extra food left over through this Raven if I'm not finding big point birds that I can use the food on. And equally, if my opponent does, for some reason, use their Phoebe that they played earlier and give me some extra free worms, then that's going to help as well. So you'll see there they did get the Franklin's Gold down in one of those turns. I found that a little bit strange. I think they already had enough kind of card generation just through their Wood Duck. So kind of in my head, I'm thinking it's probably for a bonus card, or, you know, maybe they just couldn't find any other grassland birds and they needed something for this end of round. But yeah, certainly considering really the point generation isn't there, you know, unless they find a bush tit or something, or that Junco that I did find on my previous turn, then they're probably not going to be laying eggs and using that gull too often. But yeah, for me, you see, I kind of decided I was happy with what I had. Again, kind of decided I can work with it. In hindsight, again, maybe I should have spent one more turn going for cards here. I think the Sparrow could have been a good way of kind of getting this grasslands out a little bit quicker, but probably with a better bird than the Swift. Really, again, the point generation is just not there in the grasslands. It's a little bit weak. Obviously, the Meadowlark getting me some extra eggs, but I have to bear in mind I am giving eggs to my opponent when they're running Wood Duck, which is never really ideal. And yeah, just kind of only having that 1 point generator, and then obviously the Raven, which is taking points away through the discarding of the eggs. It's a bit of a shame. So maybe I could have spent one more turn or 2 more turns going for cards, because I do score points. You know, I score 4 points there through the tucks. And yeah, I'm looking for those big point birds. That's the best way really to do that. So we'll just skip forward here to the end of the round. You'll see I've got the Sparrow and the Swift down. I did lay eggs and get a couple of worms. Now, I did get an extra free worm from my opponent's VP, which I wasn't expecting, but actually was really timely here. It meant I could play this Cuckoo. That was the 3rd column filled up, and that won me the end of round. So I felt pretty happy with that. I was thinking, you know, play the Cuckoo, it's going to get me some free eggs. What I completely failed to realise was that I don't have any bowl nests. It's kind of ironic, because that was the exact point I was making right at the start with the cowbird, and, you know, maybe I'm going to find a bowl nest later. I just completely overlooked that in playing the Cuckoo. So obviously still a good play. Hit the Forester, hits the Ecologist, helps with that end of round, and it's 5 points in its own right, which is pretty decent. So yeah, I was kind of really happy with that play. Looking back, it was still good, but kind of a definite oversight to not have the bowl nest there to get that extra eggs. So yeah, we go here into this final round, and you see I'm kind of trying to work out what the plan is, because there's kind of 2 trains of thought here. I could lay eggs 4 times and play the King Rail. That's going to leave me with 5 worms that I can tuck under the Swift. I've probably just about got the egg space, certainly if I play the King Rail earlier enough in this round to do that. So that certainly felt doable. That's very certain in the number of points I'm going to get, obviously with the exception of the bonus card. The other option, which as you'll see is the one I do end up going for, is to spend a little bit more time drawing cards. So you see, get some pretty good options really. We get the Trumpeter Swan, which is probably a better choice than the King Rail here. It's obviously more certain points, and I think I prefer that generally. I don't like gambling on bonus cards late in the game unless I feel like I really need it. Talking of gambling on bonus cards, we also get the Spoonbill, which is definitely better than the King Rail. So I think when you're looking at like King Rail versus Trumpeter Swan, the 5 points difference is huge. quite difficult to kind of bridge that gap with a bonus card. When you've got Spoonbill versus Swan, and it's only 3 points, and you start thinking, right, how many bonus cards out there are there that I could grab that are going to be worth more than 3 points? And there are quite a few. So I'm kind of looking at my board. I'm trying to think, right, I've already got Forester, but actually I could max out Prairie Manager. I could get at least 3 points on Wetland Scientist, maybe 4 if I am able to somehow get both these birds down that go in the wetlands. But yeah, there's lots of good options to score points. Obviously, Omnivore would get lots of points. Even potentially Fishery Manager is going to get a few points. So you're always kind of thinking in your head what those potential options are. And if you can think of enough that are going to get you enough points, then I think it can be worthwhile going for it. So yeah, that was kind of the turn where I thought, I've definitely got enough to work with here. I don't need to spend that extra turn drawing cards, even though it will give me those 4 points that I'm looking for. But yeah, it's really kind of time to lay eggs, start thinking about the food I want. So, I mean, really, I can make the decision now as to which of these I'm going to play, and then use that to base what food I get on that decision. So, yeah, I'm ignoring and thinking, and yeah, in the end, I do go for the fish and the seed. I'm kind of thinking maybe I get a free worm from my opponent, and I don't have to use the Raven, but ultimately I don't think any of this matters because I'm still going to be using that Raven to turn eggs into worms because I've got this common Swift. So as long as I have less than 5 worms or up to 5 worms at the end of the game, I could just turn all those into points anyway. So yeah, it felt pretty straightforward. Just kind of look to lay some eggs and get the Spoonbill down. And so we'll jump ahead here to the turn where the Spoonbill does go down. So like I said, kind of a little bit of a gamble, but I felt like I could score something from the bonus card. Unfortunately, not to be. So yeah, 2 complete duds there. Nest Box Builder pretty close, but not scoring points on either of them. So if you see me play before, you'll know I do usually try and do this. I'm not even going to keep the bonus cards. A lot of people don't know you can do that. But all benefits in Wingspan are optional, even bonus cards. So if you don't like the bonus cards you've been given, don't take them. That's my advice. That's my kind of protest against the game not giving me what I want. But that's just how the game goes. Ultimately, I could have played it more safe, like I said, gone for the Trumpeter Swan, got those extra 3 points. But yeah, I don't think here it's going to make a huge difference. Obviously, you kind of see just from my opponent's board, they've managed to build up some really good options. They've got some nice big point birds down. They played that House Sparrow as well in this final round. One of these birds from the expansion where you get to turn extra food into tuck cards, basically like the Swift, but for seeds instead. So yeah, when you're running Wood Duck, you're always going to have extra food, I think, at the end of the game like that. So being able to turn those into points, it's just huge. So really kind of good options for them. And really, I think they did a really good job of showing off the kind of strength of this Wood Duck engine. Once you get the Wood Duck down and then add a second or a third forest bird in there, you're really going to start getting the good birds you're looking for, getting lots of food, and obviously benefited a little bit from some of these free eggs that my Meadowlark has been giving away. But built up a good defense themselves with the Dunnock. Obviously gaining the eggs at the end of each round, knowing that I've spent plenty of turns activating my Grasslands. So yeah, kind of a really solid game for them, and quite a disappointing one for me, if I'm completely honest. I think there were quite a few mistakes here and there. Like I said, I think just not being aggressive enough on the card draw early on was quite a big one. That potentially has come back to cost me. Again, not having the boldness there, a little bit of a silly one. So I do miss out on 1 or 2 eggs, I think, in this final round, which is a shame. But like I said, my opponent played well. They built up the really strong forest and kind of managed to make the most of that. And yeah, just benefit from the end of round goals as well. I think only the 3rd end of round goal I managed to win. And then the other 3 they were able to get the win on. So yeah, obviously a really strong position to have. So I did have a few extra worms which I could get rid of and turn into tuck cards there through the Swift, which is nice to get a few extra points here. And yeah, we're going to the scores. So I think the writing was on the wall a little bit here. I did kind of have a feeling that it wasn't going to go my way. Obviously, the bird points was very strong. They scored very well in bonus cards as well. So even the points I did manage to score weren't quite enough. And then again, those end of round goals there, they have the edge. Eggs, I was really needing more of an advantage than that. Wasn't quite enough. And yeah, even the tuck cards at the end couldn't bring it back. So it is a defeat here, 108 to 98 against that wood duck engine. So yeah, like I said, pretty disappointing. But the only thing you can do from mistakes is try to learn from them. So I kind of look back on this game myself, but equally I think for viewers watching as well, you can kind of look back and you know, pick out points where the game turned or where I could have done things differently and try and learn from those. But hey, it's a best of 3 game series. We are not out of this yet, so do stay tuned. The remaining games in the series will be posted throughout the rest of this week. If you aren't subscribed, please do, so you can stay up to date with those videos. But otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.